And it was a trip 2 years after that where I was having a conversation with some staff members at the place I was staying. And they were all very young. They were 22, 23, 24 years old. And I asked them what their dreams were. And they all said things like, I wanted to be a policeman, I wanted to be an EMT, I wanted to be a teacher. And after they finished speaking, I said, did you notice that all of you spoke in the past tense? And they said, yes. I said, but you're only 22, 23, 24 years old. And one young man named Loyanda put his hand on my hand and he said, oh, Mama, those dreams are over for us now.
What is a promise? What do the terms accountability, inclusivity, sustainability, and ubuntu mean to you? Well, a promise is a declaration of assurance that one will do something or that a particular thing will happen. And the other words represent key principles and values that are increasingly important in global discussions today on social justice, environmental stewardship, and community development. Hi, I'm Tej, and I host Chizuba Talks, a podcast series dedicated to serving the nonprofit community by sharing their stories of hope and inspiring work. On today's episode, I have Martha Cummings, the founder and executive director of Universal Promise. Universal Promise is a nonprofit serving to address academic inequities in north of Port Elizabeth. There's a word there, Martha, you would correct me later. And this is in Eastern Cape, South Africa. We shall learn about their work and the opportunities they have for anyone wanting to make a difference. Welcome to Chizuba Talks, Martha.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Martha, where are you located? Please tell us.
I am based in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, in the United States.
All right. And your nonprofit works for academic inequities in?
South Africa. In rural South Africa, yes.
Right. So how did Universal Promise start and what is your mission? Is it only academics or is it more than that?
So it started by a visit to South Africa to celebrate my 50th birthday quite a few years ago now. And we traveled into one of the rural regions and I had the opportunity to visit one of the townships. And there I saw the conditions of the local schools. And that didn't immediately lead to the founding of Universal Promise, but it got me thinking about what I could possibly do to help. And it was a trip 2 years after that where I was having a conversation with some staff members at the place I was staying. And they were all very young. They were 22, 23, 24 years old. And I asked them what their dreams were. And they all said things like, I wanted to be a policeman, I wanted to be an EMT, I wanted to be a teacher. And after they finished speaking, I said, did you notice that all of you spoke in the past tense? And they said, yes. I said, but you're only 22, 23, 24 years old. And one young man named Loyanda put his hand on my hand and he said, oh, Mama, those dreams are over for us now. And that was the singular moment where I thought, okay, this is tragic and unacceptable. And a few months later, Universal Promise was formed. And yes, our focus is exclusively on education. But to be clear about it, we include in that all the traditional forms of education, of course, and what you would think we would fund under that umbrella. But we also include in that healthcare and health and well-being, because we believe that education about health and healthcare and well-being, that's all extremely important in order to fuel the other element, which is getting properly trained, getting a degree, and building a career that will lead one to be financially free. And without proper health and well-being, the other can't happen. So it includes both.
Right. What a beautiful story. And that was a promise made to not only the people of rural Africa, but also to yourself, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, I'm so glad. I want to come back to your highlighting the word promise, because there's a reason why we put it in the name of our organization, because we think it's a sacred word. Our mother taught us that a promise must also be always be adhered to unless there's some kind of a major reason why it cannot, for health or emergency purposes. But a promise is a promise. And we selected that word because we think once one makes a promise, one must do everything to honor that promise, especially when it relates to people who have been promised many things historically, and those promises have not been honored. So yes, the promise of education, it's something that I have personally wedded to. I have seen firsthand how education can help interrupt that brutal, relentless cycle of poverty and change the mindset from expecting a handout to expecting the person to be able to affect those changes for himself or herself. It's empowering, it's freeing, it enhances self-confidence and self-esteem, and it eliminates the threat of what I call economic paralysis, because it puts the ownership in the hands of the individual.
True, very true. Now, what was the reaction of the local population when you said you are going to start Universal Promise and this is what I'm going to do for you? Were they
Mm.
excited? I'm assuming they would have been excited.
Well,
But
that's
what were the
the
baby steps?
that's a fabulous question because I thought they would be excited, right? But it comes back to the word promise. They've been promised many, many, many things. And I think there was a part of them that thought, here we go again. We don't know this person. She's from a foreign country. She's not from our culture. What can we really believe? And I said, when I announced that we're partnering and, we went through the sort of protocols, and there was no reaction whatsoever. And I said, "Are you excited? Are you excited?" And one man, a teacher whom I adore, raised his hand and said, "We will be excited when the first shovel goes into the ground. When the first shovel goes into the ground." And I thought, okay, that's fair until we prove that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. I respect and I completely understand the skepticism. However, things started to change once they saw that we were going to do what we said we would.
Lovely. And were you filled with trepidation? Will I be able to do this? Will I be able to go ahead? What kind of support system did you have to start this?
So I wasn't really filled with trepidation, and this comes back to the point about education. I was fortunate to get a very good education, which led me to believe that I could really do anything. And I know that sounds arrogant, but I don't mean it to sound arrogant. What I mean is that education gave me the tools to figure out anything that I didn't know. It's been a learning curve, for sure. I had a lot to learn about nonprofit work because I had never done it before. But one thing that I did know is that it was imperative that we put the local stakeholders, in charge of our agenda. And if I may, what happened that first day when I asked about, are you excited? Later on that day, I started to talk to them about their top 10 wishes. I said, if we could fulfill your top 10 wishes at your school, you think about what they would be. And I gave them a little bit of time, and then I asked them for their number one wish. Now, if you had seen this school, my thoughts about their number one wishes would be, a computer laboratory, electricity, a playground, sports facilities, renovated classrooms, a host of things that I thought would be number one. And they all agreed that the first thing they wanted was a fence, perimeter fencing. And I was
Fence.
a fence. And I
For
was
wild
taken aback.
animals.
So I was really taken aback, and I said, a fence? Will you please tell me why a fence? And because they didn't have proper fencing there. And it really is embedded in a lot of things that I wouldn't have understood if I didn't ask. And so, number one, it's definitely protection. It's around the entire perimeter of the school, and it was a good, solid investment. It was to keep out things like goats, which were making their way onto the property and hurting the children. But it was also to keep out strangers who shouldn't be wandering onto that campus. The fence itself sent a very strong message to the community that the school now had the protection that was worthy of their children, that it was now a school, it was now a place where the parents would feel comfortable sending their children there. So we listened to them. We built the fence. We installed a host of other security measures as well. And the other reason for the fence is that historically there had been weekend break-ins every single weekend. So without the security measures, everything that they had was subject to serious vulnerability. With the fence, it eliminated that. It eliminated that completely. But the wake-up call for me was, I knew I didn't know what was best for that community, but that fence story highlighted how much I didn't know about what was best for that community. And that led to the birth of what I call our signature protocol, which is the top 10 wish list method. And we can go into that in a bit if you'd like. But to come back to your question, that was another reason why I didn't have much trepidation, because I knew we were putting the agenda and the priorities in the hands of the people who knew best.
Right, right. So you did involve the communities, and that continues even today, I believe,
It
taking
does.
the requirements of the community and executing your programs. So yes, please tell us about the 10 wish list. Let's take a break to understand what Chizuba is. Everyone at some point ponders on how this beautiful life can be made more meaningful. Maybe you're a leader trying to enhance your employees' experience at your organization. Or you already work for the community and seek volunteers with state-of-the-art skills to strengthen your nonprofit. Whatever your situation, know that you can make a difference. Chizuba began with this very vision, a vision to facilitate every skill and every passion in the world in meeting a social need. Corporate volunteering has several benefits for both businesses and organizations. In parallel, experienced and enthusiastic volunteers join NGO workers, enabling them to serve the community more effectively. Chizuba offers everyone looking to add purpose and meaning to their lives a chance to connect or volunteer virtually with nonprofit organizations from over 100 countries around the world. Visit www.chizuba.net and explore opportunities to find meaning. Chizuba, your platform to do good. And now, back with our guest.
Right. So what we do is we reach out, we find what we end up calling partner schools, which is a formal partnership. And we ask all of the stakeholders, from the kindergartners all the way up to the guardians, and some of them the elderly guardians of the children. So we also include teachers and educators and parents, and as I said, the youngest children to the oldest children. And we ask them for their top 10 wishes for change. And we like to ask all the stakeholders, because a kindergartner might say something like porridge. They're hungry, they want something to eat. Whereas an older person will focus on things like drainage, proper restrooms, things like that. So after we get all 4 of those lists, we sit down with the principal and we consolidate the lists. We keep all those things that have to do with education, and we eliminate all those things that don't have to do with education. And then the principal and Universal Promise prioritize those from 1 through 10. Number 1 is always security, based on the lesson that we learned back in 2011. Number 2 has become clean water, access to clean water, because every school with which we've partnered has not had access to clean water, and sometimes no water at all, which has far-reaching ramifications well beyond just thirst. And then numbers 3 through 10 are up to the schools, and they design the way forward. Then we engage in a very serious mutual partnership where for any given list item on the list, the school has to do something in advance of our doing anything. And then we come in and we support. And then we pause after we fulfill each wish list. And the reason why the school has to do something is because we want to inculcate this sense of partnership and mutual accountability and definitely inclusivity. And we do not want to promote this idea of a handout because, as I said before, in a way, it can be insulting to the recipient and problematic in the long term. So by having them do something, and it's usually not of a monetary basis, on a monetary basis, it's, if we're building a playground, they need to go out there and they need to clean the playground. They need to pick up the stones. They need to weed the area. They need to put out buckets so that we can use those for recycling to keep the playground clean and free from trash. And it's little things like that, but it immediately helps them to take some ownership and pride in the project. And then we come in and fund it.
That is beautiful. That's a perfect example of partnership.
Yes.
When you say partnership, there are bound to be disagreements. There are bound to be, saying that, okay, but I need this first, rather than say clean water. I'm just taking the example here. Rather than just clean water, I need toilets first, and then I need drinking water, something like that. So,
Mhm.
how do you settle these disagreements?
So we listen to them. So, in other words, number one is always security, and that's not negotiable because we have an unbelievable sort of manifest to honor our donors. We have to honor what our donors are sacrificing in order to make these projects come to fruition, and we have to protect the children and the educators in the space as well. So that's not negotiable. But 2 through 10 really are. So if we arrive at a school and there's no need for a clean water system, then we obviously listen to them and don't do that. And if there's a good discussion about why one item might be more necessary in the hierarchy than another, then we listen to them as well. But that really has not happened because when the principal and Universal Promise sit down to prioritize the top 10, the principal has already been in contact with all the stakeholders and discussed the top 10 order with those stakeholders. So it's coming from the community. That said, we have altered the top 10 wish list when we've made our way through. So for instance, and we don't do it arbitrarily, we do it in conjunction with the schools. So for instance, 2 years ago, the school had an infirmary on its top 10 wish list. But after we did a series of art workshops at the school, and the students found them very engaging, and the principal was amazed by the talent that is in the community that had gone untapped, she asked if we would transfer out the infirmary and instead build an art studio. And feeling that she could handle the infirmary issue in another way, but not feeling that she could go another day without an art studio at that school after she saw what it had accomplished. So there are negotiations back and forth, always deferring to them and their expertise.
Wonderful. Martha, I know that you have the name Nobuntu, and uh, you know, we would like to know what Ubuntu means and how did you get the name Nobuntu?
Okay, thank you. I'm very proud of this name. So Ubuntu is a southern, sub-Saharan philosophy that means basically I am because of you, or I am because we are, or basically humanity. So that the notion is that every exchange that we have, even the one we're having right now, you will be affected by it for better or worse. I will be affected by it, but for better, for worse, definitely better. And it affects who I am and how we then, the lens through which we see the life. I love the concept of Ubuntu. When I think about different nations' national philosophies, I love the fact that South Africa has a philosophy that's based on humanity. Nobuntu is the female derivative of Ubuntu. So it's a way to recognize someone's commitment to helping others, to uplifting others. and it was given to me by a faculty member at that first school with which we ever partnered, and it has stuck with me.
Stayed on.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So how do they address you? So do I say Nobuntu, Martha, or do I just say Nobuntu?
Both. So it depends on the age. So if someone's, and this is another thing I love about the culture, because a lot of the ways of addressing are based on Ubuntu. So for instance, if I'm significantly older, they'll call me Mama Nubuntu, Mama Nubuntu. And if we're roughly the same age, they'll call me just Nobuntu. Or if we know each other really well, then they'll just call me, Nobuntu. There's no reason to, if I know them well, they can just say Nobuntu. And it warms my heart, when they call me that versus Martha. So when I'm there, I love to hear that name.
That is beautiful. But my question is, if two of you are standing, you and somebody else is standing with you, and they want to address you, so do they call you Nobuntu, or is it something that a person has earned?
Well, that's a great question. It's something anyone in the community can call me that who knows me. That's my name. That's the way by and large, that's the way they address me. I just learned recently, though, that the naming of someone is actually it can be in this culture quite an honor, that not everyone gets to name someone else. I know that's not what you're asking, but I thought that was very, very interesting, that not everyone gets to name. And when I think back about the woman who named me, she was a very experienced teacher at the school. She was a real leader at that school. And that intrigued me, why she was the one who stepped up to do it. Now I understand a little bit more why. But, anyone can use that name for me now that they know that's my Xhosa name.
Well, beautiful. So I will address you as Nobuntu.
Okay, thank you.
So, Nobuntu, now tell us from some beautiful stories must have come out of these so many years. So if you could share a few with us on this podcast, that would be amazing.
Yeah, the impact is, we've been in the same location now since 2011. So we've seen children who started in kindergarten, and who now are in grade 12. And the result is that we're able to now collect what we call metrics over time. And I think there are two kinds of metrics that are really important. One of them are the statistical metrics, and then another one is the anecdotal metrics, the storytelling, that they bring a more human element to it. But we have been able to, for instance, if we go through some of the stats, 1% of schools in the Eastern Cape have perimeter fencing at their school, whereas 100% of our partner schools do. As a result, enrollment increases instantly as soon as that fence goes up. So, for instance, one of our schools before the fence had 350 students enrolled in it, and now it boasts 1,200 students there. And so I think it means that not only are the parents keeping their children in the township to attend school there, but I also think it means that more students are actually enrolling in school. It's both. It's both things happening. We enroll students in school uniform. In South Africa, children are required to wear school uniforms. We all understand why. It's supposed to level the playing field and make everyone feel the same. But when the child is unable to afford a school uniform, it makes the difference even more pronounced. It actually defeats the purpose of a school uniform, or the idea of a school uniform. So we, for instance, in one of our schools, when we first partnered, only 20% of the students had school uniforms. And then that climbed to 40%, then 60%, and now 100% of the students are in school uniforms. That affects everything. It affects attendance rates. It affects pass rates. It affects self-confidence and self-esteem and comfort in a child's his or her own skin. So that has been a huge boost since we've been participating there. Grade 7 pass rate at one of the schools was 54% before our partnership, and now the pass rate is 99%. So it's grown
Wow,
dramatically.
that's amazing.
The grade 12 pass rate in another school, 12% of grade 12 students used to pass their matric exams, which are the end of high school exams. And last year, that rate had gone up to nearly 80%. So it's just a host of things like that. Mastery of the home language was 36%. Now it's 96%. And that's similar for English, and that's similar for mathematics. I think that has, now we can't claim that we are the sole responsibility for these changes. Obviously, there are a lot of factors that go into it. But I do think things like, these state-of-the-art computer labs that we've built that have software that parallels the government curriculum has definitely had an impact. And computer literacy along those lines has risen from 0% to 100%, and access to clean water has also risen to 100%. So those are the statistics that validate that what we're doing to some degree is working.
Right. So it is important, right, to have these metrics, because if you are looking for donors, if you are looking for people wanting to help out, they need to see that something is happening there.
That's
So
right.
coming to that part, where do you kind of foresee help that the organization needs? Do you need volunteers? Do you need resources? What is it that a person can do to help you?
Yes, we would love volunteers. We have a volunteer program that runs once or twice a year, depending. And we've got one coming up in February of 2025, for instance. And it's real volunteerism side by side with the locals. It's not really meant for us to be spending time with each other. It's meant for us to be really understanding and working alongside the local population, the students and contractors and things like that. So that's one thing that people can help. We are, in need of tapping into some corporate sponsorships. Because ultimately, look, at nonprofits, it comes down to money. We need money in order to do what we do. And I think if more big corporations knew about what we do and how we do it and our success rates and our charity rankings, I think they'd be more inclined to give. So we're always looking for some kind of corporate sponsorship. We're also looking for the volunteering on the ground here in the United States, in addition to South Africa. There are ways for people to help. For instance, we partnered with a local university who helped us analyze our website and help us with storytelling and help us with the whole need to gather metrics, things like that. We're interested in any company that's willing to donate gently used technology, not just laptops, but tablets or, phones that we could distribute to the people over there who are our partners on the ground. And anyone who can volunteer with us at some of our local fundraisers here in the United States, all of that would be very well received.
Lovely. I hope the people who are watching and listening to this will definitely act and do something about Ubuntu's request.
Thank you.
And last question here. What do you envision for Universal Promise in the next 5 years? I know you are doing great work. I know you are expanding. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
So what we've been waiting to do is we've been waiting to make sure that we have a model that works, that's rare, that's grounded in something that's important, that's crystal clear and unwavering, and now needs to be expanded. So we're at that junction now. We've ticked all those boxes, and we are now at the point where we do want to expand. And by expand, I don't mean in another country. I mean in the same region. We're in Sundays River Valley, it's called, in the Eastern Cape, which is quite a large region in the Eastern Cape. But our goal is to just keep expanding without losing the personal touch, but keep expanding throughout the Eastern Cape as time goes on. So right now, I'm the only paid employee of the organization, and we are now searching to hire someone who will help with some fundraising and marketing and development. So that's evidence of, trying to expand and also trying to help us be more sustainable. But that's the idea, is to try to raise enough funds that we can hire more people and that we can spread our expansion within that region, but to more schools. Double, triple, quadruple the number of schools, which means that the top 10 wish list would also follow suit. So methodically spread until this region, which is now the Eastern Cape, the worst performing region in the country with respect to education, to try to turn it slowly but surely into something that is, has been elevated to a level of which, everybody can be proud.
That's a beautiful vision, Martha. Thank you so much for talking to us. It has been an enchanting conversation, understanding so many aspects of not only volunteering, but also doing something with passion, right? So you are here. The first promise is to honor promises.
That's
And
correct.
I think Martha, Nubuntu here knows change happens. And this is proverb I looked at on your website, and it's called Umtu Nagamtu Nagabantu. Have I pronounced it correct? I don't know.
Pretty darn good, yes.
And that's a beautiful philosophical saying in Africa, which means, that a person is a person through other people.
Mm-hmm.
So otherwise, why are we here? And that
Exactly.
is really, really beautiful. Everybody has to think about that. Thank you so much, Martha, for talking to us, and wish you all the best with Universal Promise.
Thank you very much for having us. We really appreciate anyone who helps others understand what we're doing and tries to spread the word. So we're very, very grateful today. Thank you.